Hi, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to assemble a Chu-ko-Nu from a Morris Models kit. Here's all the pieces before we begin the assembly process. Now we're going to start working on the assembly, and by the way, it's a beautiful summer morning and I'm sitting outside on my back porch. You're looking straight down at me and you'll get to see my bald head in just a minute. I'm going to start by arranging all the different pieces into different categories as to where they're going to go on this model. There's about 30 pieces total by the time we're done. So we're going to arrange the cheeks of the stock, and we're going to put the bolt box together, and we're going to put the handle together, and all the different pieces are going to go together. And it isn't going to take us very long. I think it's about 25 minutes to watch the entire process. I'll be taking a few brief breaks for glue to dry, but you don't need that. Now, not in the kit, you can see we have some Elmer's glue all and some 180 grit sandpaper and some nice stout rubber bands. And those are going to be the primary thing we're going to be using to put this together. I think we're also going to use a scissors and a piece of paper by the time we're done. Otherwise, everything comes out of the kit. I'm going to start by putting the side of the stock, and you'll notice there are two of them. I've got one of them arranged one direction and one of them arranged the other direction because they're going to kind of fit against each other. And we're going to put some Elmer's glue all on there. I will go off screen and clear that nozzle, and we're going to just put some light glue down. If you look at the instruction spot, the instruction sheet will show you what to put down a little more than this, where to put it down. But you can see it's really a light bead of glue that we're putting down. Not a lot of glue, because a lot of glue just messes everything up. We're going to go around that edge and in between each of the individual little mortise spots. We're going to glue the one side of the stock, and then we're going to turn around once we're done with that, and we're going to start on the other side of the stock, and it's just a mirror image. And go all the way around, just a light bead of glue in all the individual spots that are going to make contact. There we go, moving our way around, getting all those little spots. Wrapping that up. Once we've made it all the way around with the glue, we're going to stop, and we're actually going to sand the top and bottom pieces of the stock. You can see where that's going to go. You'll see these pieces, they have like almost a ladder-like series of partial cuts on them. And I'm just sanding a little bevel on it. I'll show you the side view here in just a second. Sanding a little bevel so that they can fit up against the strong back of the stock in a slightly better way. Now you can see that bevel. It was about 50 strokes on the sandpaper. And it's going to move right there. You'll notice that when you're sanding the bevel, the lines that are engraved are down, and those lines are going to let it curve here in just a minute. So there we go, moving our way along. Again, about 50 strokes on the sandpaper. This is not highly specific. In fact, you can even ignore this, but it does look a little better if you do it. Blow that sawdust out of the way. And there you can see that bevel that we've sanded. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the strong back. That's the longest one of these pieces, and I just pointed at the little point that comes forward. Okay, the flat side goes to the back of the stock, the point goes to the front of the stock, and it runs straight across that straight line, right down the whole length of the stock. Now the longer piece that we just beveled goes on the top of the stock, and sometimes you knock things over, and sometimes you don't knock things over. The little bitty short piece with the point facing downwards goes on the front of the stock, and our last piece, that's the bottom piece, it goes on the back of the stock. And now we're going to turn that over so the glue goes down, and we are going to do our best. Oops, there we go. We're going to do our best to make everything line up nice and neat and straight. We're going to press all of those pieces in. Once we get it all the way pressed down, there we go. Once we get it all the way pressed down, it kind of holds itself in place, but it's better if we clamp it. And we're going to use those rubber bands for clamps here in just a second. All right. So one of the things we're going to want to do is we're going to want to join several of those rubber bands together. So if you've never done this before, you just kind of pull them and stretch them out good. And if you, whatever knot you want to use, that works. But we're going to loop that over one of those pieces at the end, and we're just going to start wrapping this down really nice and tight along the length of the stock. And when we come to the place where the bottom and the top are not straight against the sides, we're just going to skip that spot, move on to the rest, and just keep turning round and round and round as we move down the length of the stock. Down near the end, I'm going to slip my thumb underneath that rubber band, and that's going to help me kind of tie this rubber band end off. I've got at least another rubber band sticking out. So I'm going to pull that up over the top of the stock, right over like so, and I'm going to bring it all the way down and attach that on the end. And that's got everything held together, except it's not bending those pieces we talked about right there. We want those pieces to bend inward and make it look like they're following the edge of the stock. So I'm going to join about 3 more rubber bands together, and we're going to go ahead and we're just going to strap those pieces down really nice and tight. Very similar to what we just did. Stick it on the edge, start spinning around, and when we get to right where those pieces are, I'm just going to wrap them really tight. That's going to force those pieces to bend on those partial cuts. And hold them in nice and tight. And when I get close to the end, I'm going to run it over my thumb, and then I'm just going to flip it over the top and just kind of hold it, tuck it under that way. And now we've got the basic stock done. And we're going to have to add the handle in a few minutes and the cheeks, but otherwise the stock is done, and we'll set it off to the side, and we'll move on to the next thing. The next thing I'm going to do is work on the 2 handles. And we got the handle for the back of the stock, and we got the handle for the lever. And I'm going to start on that handle for the lever. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on that middle piece on all 3 spots, and then I'm going to turn it over and get just a little more glue. Again, go light on this glue. Go light on this glue. It's way easier to have too much glue than not enough glue. We don't really want a lot squeezing out when we put our pieces together. And we got to manually line these pieces up so that piece with the 2 cuts is in the center. Gives us 2 little holes. We're going to line up the edges, and if there's any glue off on the squeezed out, we're going to pull that glue off. Just take it off with our finger. That's the beauty of white glue. It doesn't hurt anybody. We're going to do the same thing across here, except we have 2 partial pieces, and I'm just going to put a little glue on one side, a little glue on the other side of the other partial piece, and I'm just going to go ahead and stick those 2 partial, oops, there's the thing falling. We're going to go ahead and stick the partial pieces down on both sides. Put a little more glue on top of those partial pieces so we can get that 3rd piece on the top and make up our little sandwich. There we are. Now we want to line everything up and clean off any extra glue squeeze out. There we are. Get everything all nice and lined. That's not a soundtrack. That's actually the birds in my backyard singing. And we're just going to go ahead and finish up the the handle, and then we're going to start working on the cheeks. Now, I want you to notice on these cheeks, you can see that there's some smoke damage, and a lot of these parts are going to have a little smoke damage because they're cut on a laser. I actually want to put the most smoke damaged parts down, and I'm going to put just a little dab of glue in the tiny little hole on these cheeks. Now I've got my toothpick, and I'm just going to press that into position. I'm not pushing it really far. I just want it to jut just a little bit out the opposite side. And you'll notice my smoky sides are on the outside and my good sides are on the inside. I'm going to let those dry, and we're going to turn our attention to the bolt box or the magazine, whichever you want to call that. We got the 2 halves of the magazine, and I'm going to put those are the bad sides, so I'm going to put the bad sides down, or sorry, the good sides down and the bad sides up on this, because I want to get the best looking sides that I can showing. You're not going to see this side because it's on the inside. Very similar to how we did on the stock. We're just going to put a couple of beads of glue. There are 4 lines that have to be glued, and we're going to glue all 4 of those lines on one side, then turn around and glue all 4 of the same lines on the other side. Again, look at the instructions, and it'll show you a little better where those lines are. Here you can just see that light bead of glue going down. Works better for me to go the other direction. Light bead of glue going down all the way around the edge. And there, get the top. There we are. That's the front piece that I'm working on right now. And now you're going to see I got a little bit of extra glue there, so we're just going to wipe it off, and then I'll put a little glue back on the edge because I'll let that line get in a little bit of the wrong spot. Not a big deal. We just want to fix it. Don't overdo the glue, or it does become a big deal, though. All right. So now we're going to start with the front piece, and you can see it's got a little joint across the top. I've got a little dab of glue on that joint. And then the other short piece, that's the top of the barrel, it fits right against there, and it kind of bends. Now, we're going to go ahead and slide that top of the barrel onto the front of the magazine or the bolt box. And then we're going to put the front so it joins right into the edges. Takes a little more time there. There we go. Get everything lined up. And once everything's lined up, it'll all press into place. There we go. The bottom, it doesn't matter which direction you use, which direction you put it, but it'll fit right across all the little mortises on the bottom. And this back side has a little pointy part that points downward when we do it. Don't point it upward, point it downward. There it is. It's going to be the tightest of all the pieces because it has multiple mortises that are enclosed on all sides. So we're going to get that in place and push it down home. And now it's time to pick up that side of the bolt box and turn it over and join it to the other side. Get everything all lined up. Very similar to what we did on the stock. It's pretty much the same process all over again. We're just going to push all of those pieces down. I wiped a little extra glue off there with my finger, and now we're ready to attach these. I'll join them all with rubber bands. I'm going to start by just rubber banding around the back. That'll hold everything in really nice and tight at the back. And then we're going to rubber band around the little snub barrel. You can see I'm not very good at rubber banding with my right hand, so we'll switch to the left hand. There we go, that's going to work a lot better. Get those rubber bands done. Oh, there goes the air conditioner. Air conditioner came on. Sorry about that background noise. All right, so we got the two ends done. I'm going to grab a few more rubber bands, and I'm going to put a rubber band right around the entire bolt box there, and then let's put another one right up the middle. That'll just kind of hold everything together. Last thing I'm going to do is put a single doubled up rubber band running the other direction right across the middle of the bolt box, and that's just going to hold everything together. Don't get too carried away with these rubber bands. You can bend these parts. They're pretty little and delicate. There they go. Now that air conditioner's really running now. All right, but our bolt box is done, and we're going to set that aside to dry. Now, you'll notice it hasn't been very long, but this stuff dries pretty quickly if you treat it well. So we are going to go ahead, put the smoky side in the center on our two handles, and then I'm going to put a little dab of glue into each of the little holes in that handle. Now we'll work that down until it reaches the bottom. There's one side. There we go. And now we're going to turn and do the exact same thing to the other side. And again, we want the smoky side on the inside so nobody sees the smoky parts. If you paint this, you don't have to worry about which side's smoky. We'll set it down, and that's going to keep everything even while it dries. And now I'm going to start applying parts to the stock. I'm going to start by pulling my rubber bands off the end. Still got all those rubber bands around that middle section. That takes the longest to dry. Now we're going to put a little glue on the top and bottom piece there on the handle. There's a little glue again. Don't get carried away with the glue. Now we're going to put a couple of dabs of glue on the two pointy parts, the two ends. A couple on the top, a couple on the bottom, and that should be plenty. We're going to work that up. Work that into its socket. Push it home. It should fit nice and snug. And there it is. We probably don't even need to clamp this because it fits so snug, but pulling it tight with a rubber band would be nice. Unfortunately, we don't have any place to secure the rubber band, so we're just going to use a couple of the pieces that were hanging loose, and that's going to let that dry really nice. So now we want to do the other side, and we're going to undo the rubber bands, and this is where we're going to put the two cheeks. But before we put the two cheeks down, we got to trim that toothpick that we put in. I'm using the width of the handle to make sure I trim the toothpick to the right length, because it should jut out about 2 millimeters, less than the width of the handle on each side. And it's kind of the pointy part, but I'm just trimming the point off a little bit, so it goes almost the width of one sheet of plywood. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go and I'm going to trim the inside, and you can trim this flush, but I like to leave about 1.5 millimeters, about half the width of a piece of plywood on that. Now we've got those two pieces, and that pointy side's going to go right into that slot, and it's going to move back and forth. That's why we needed that pointy part of the toothpick. There's our two parts. Remember, our smoky side is on the same side as the pointy part of the toothpick, and we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of glue. A little bit of glue to the front, a little bit of glue to the back of that joint. You can see where everything matches up across there. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've found which side is the pointy part. Okay, the pointy part juts to the inside, and I'm actually going to use the big piece of the bow to kind of help me line everything up. We're just going to take that big piece of the bow and put it in. You got to click it up over the top. There we are, because there's two sides. And there we are. That'll help us line everything up. It's not a perfect alignment, so we want to check, and you'll see my finger got into the glue there, so I had to be careful. Some people might want to go ahead and put the second part of the bow in, and I guess you could, but it fits pretty tightly, so I would hold off on that if I were you. We're going to hold off on that on this video, and I'm going to put a little glue back to replace what my thumb just smeared. This is why I don't use epoxy. That's nasty on your fingers. This stuff doesn't hurt a bit, and it works great. It's real cheap, and it does good, and it sets fast, so why use anything else? And notice we put the magazine so that point is holding it in place, and we're putting the second cheek down, and that point's going to come up into that little slot, and that is going to secure our magazine. It can ride back and forth on those two little points of the toothpick, but it can't come out anymore. And now we've got everything lined up, and I'm going to set that aside. If I had a wooden C-clamp, I'd probably clamp it right where my fingers were there, but that's going to do. And I'm going to just give it about 10 or 15 minutes to dry. That was fast drying glue. All right, our 10 or 15 minutes is over, and we are ready to go ahead and join up the handle. But first we need to undo the rubber bands. Now you don't really need to watch me undo these rubber bands, do you? Let's speed this video up a little bit. Come on, you can do it. There we are. Speed that little video up, and we can make it even go faster and pull all those rubber bands off. All right, being pretty delicate, because I only gave it about 10 minutes for the glue to dry. If you gave it a half an hour, you can be a little more definitive about this. Wouldn't even hurt to give it an overnight here. We're going to pull off all those rubber bands, and once all those rubber bands are off, it's going to be time to attach the handle. I want you to notice that we can slide that back and forth along that, and it can pivot up and down. And the handle's going to move it back and forth, and up and down at the same time. So we're just going to push that handle up into place, grab one of those 1/4-inch pins, and let's turn this on the side so you can see what's going on. That hole in the handle is going to match up, and we can pop the 1/4-inch pin in, and then we want to line up the hole in the stock and pop the 1/4-inch pin in there, and that should hold everything in place. Now we're going to secure these handles, we're going to secure these pins with just a little dab of glue. Each one gets a little dab of glue on the edge of the handle and the edge of the pin, and you can go all the way around, but I just put a little dab on. It doesn't need a lot. We're going to go ahead and do that. A little more side view there. You can see we got a dab of glue on each side. That's going to keep everything from coming loose. This is going to take a little while to dry now. This is probably the longest part of the glue to dry, because the glue is not really between pieces of wood. It's just kind of on the outside, and it's just going to stay there. So we're going to set that off to the side to dry. While it's drying, I think I'm going to go ahead and do what I can do. So I'm going to put a piece of paper across there, and I'm going to build a bowstring. This is a bowstring off of a previous one, and you can see it's 11 inches, which is the same width as the paper. Here's the piece of string from the kit, and we're going to start by tying just one knot through both sides, and then just put a little loop on the end of that string. So just a standard knot there, and we're going to pull it tight, and then we can line up that knot with the edge of the paper. You can see where the next knot needs to go. Now, come about 1/4 inch past where that knot where the edge of the paper is, because when you tie the knot, it's going to shorten the string a little bit. So about the same as that little pin that was in the handle. That's about how much farther past to go. And sorry about getting off the camera there. I'm going to go ahead and tie that second piece, the second loop, and when I've got it done, you should be able to see it's the same width as the piece of paper. Now, if you got it just a little bit too long, you can see this previous one, look carefully and the knot's bigger. That's because I tied an extra knot on it, because it was just a little bit too long to start with. And tying an extra knot on each side shortens it a little bit. If you tied it too short, that's not so easy. You have to untie it and start over again. But we're going to go ahead and trim the string. Don't trim it too short. Leave 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch of the string hanging out the side. And then we got our bow done. Now let's turn our attention to the bolts. I have a little bit of modeling clay here, and that's going to make these little paper coffee stirrers fly straight. I'm going to pull a piece of modeling clay about the size of a pea, then roll it out and put it inside the bolt. The problem is it's hard to stick there, and it'll fall back out if I'm not careful. So I find that finding some little stick that'll fit up the inside of the bolt will help to keep the modeling clay there. I'm just going to push it up inside and compress that modeling clay down onto the end, and that's all I need to do to build one of my bolts. It's done. We're going to go ahead and do that again. Roll our little pea-sized bit of modeling clay out, stick it in the end, grab our little stick, 3/16 inch dowel rod's what I've got here. I'm going to push it up on the end, and then I'm going to move on. And you can see it doesn't take very long to build your ammo. And those are 5.5 inch long paper coffee stirring sticks, by the way, paper coffee stirrers. So there we are. I built 3 bolts, and that's enough bolts for us to keep going for a while. All right, we're going to have to give this a little more time because we don't want to take too long. But I'm going to sand the edges of the bow just really lightly. Just lightly sand on that. I don't want to take a lot of material off, but it's going to help us to put the tight parts in. Mainly I'm just sanding the corners, and there's also another reason. I got a pretty nasty little splinter off of bamboo once, and I don't want to repeat that. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the corners on both the front and the rear bow. And once I'm done sanding the front and the rear bow, we're going to put the two of them together and just center that rear bow up across the top of the front bow. There it is. Make it all nice, neat, and centered. Now we're going to thread that through that little double slot. And this is the hardest part of the entire project. It fits pretty firmly because I didn't want it falling out on you. I didn't want you to have to use glue. If it's too loose, you'll have to use a drop of glue, but I don't want you to have to use glue. So we're going to push that through, and we're going to keep going until it's centered. You can see me kind of measuring with my hand, and I didn't get it quite right on this one, but I got it pretty close, and you can always adjust it later. That's why I don't want you to have to use glue, so you can adjust it later. There it is. Now, we're going to put the bowstring in place, and the way you do that is you lift the handle. Right? When you lift the handle, there's a little, right at the back of the slot, there's a little round cutout, and that's just big enough for the knot. So I'm going to push that bowstring through. It's got to go through both sides. It's a little hard. You might want to use a toothpick to kind of help you. And we're going to pull it across both sides. Car driving by. There we go. And now the bowstring is through. We'll move everything out of the way, and we are going to string that bow. All right, the little loop goes around on the one side. Be careful when you string the bow. You need to bend both sides with your hands, because both sides of the bow have to bend, otherwise it'll just snap. Bend both sides and get it all. Yeah, it's definitely not quite straight. Let's adjust it just a little bit. Bald head alert. There we are. Still not perfect, but I think it's going to do. We push it all the way forward. Oh, it's working nicely. Yes, everything looks good. Okay, here's from the side view. You can kind of see how it works. As we go forward, the bowstring catches in the slot, and then as it comes backwards, the handle kicks it off the slot and it fires. All right, remember those 3 bolts we just built? Let's drop them in the front. Modeling clay towards the front. And here we are. Okay. Yep, it fires. Beautiful. And we just fired all of our arrows. Probably not a good idea to dry fire it, but I did it there anyhow. Now, there we are, the completed project, and let's go find something to shoot with it. I'm looking out at my yard, and oh, I think there's something out there by my wife's garden. Okay, yep, I'm pretty sure I saw something, so shh, we'll sneak up on it. There we are, right around the corner. Be quiet now. Oh, there it is. There it is, a beautiful, beautiful target. Now, we don't want to frighten the target. Okay, we'll slide in place, and there we are. Yes, it's a clean kill. All right, so here we are. Beautiful. Well, that's it for all of this. Please use this responsibly. I hope you enjoy messing with it as much as I enjoyed creating it.